Hello again, everybody. My name is Mike Petralia. It's episode 212 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network, www.clnsmedia.com. Follow us on Twitter at CLNS Media and Facebook at facebook.com/CLNS Media. This gives me great pleasure to introduce one of my cohorts down at Foxborough, inside the walls of Gillette Stadium. I have worked with this man for many years now, and it's really been a treat. The Red Sox have their Big Smooth and Drew Pomerantz. The Patriots Beat has their own version of the Big Smooth in the Senator, Phil Perry of CSNNE.com, soon to be NBC Sports Boston, one of the smoothest, most unflappable guys on the beat, and a terrific reporter. How's that for an intro, Phil Perry?
Wow, what an intro. I'm going to just have everyone down there, Bill Belichick included, just start referring to me as Big Smooth, because I like that.
Yeah, and I don't think you'd get any argument. I think Bill would, as he does, crack a wry smile and nod his head and go, "Yeah, I think that works, Phil. You are the Big Smooth." Now, I want to start off talking to. We do the conference calls every Tuesday, Phil, obviously, with Bill Belichick and the coordinators, offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels and defensive coordinator Matt Patricia. Josh McDaniels on Tuesday was. He struck a chord with me. There was a theme toward the end of it about, he was asked several times about what is this offense going to do with at least two receivers for sure, pretty much out of the loop for the indefinite foreseeable future in Julian Edelman and Malcolm Mitchell, and Danny Amendola, who was concussed, we presume, with the head injury against the Chiefs on Thursday night. He's, certainly going to be a big question mark this week. What is the game plan? And Josh McDaniels said, we have a bucket. We have a bucket of options that we choose from, and we go into every week with this bucket. So what's in your bucket of stories this week, Phil?
Man, I just have so many questions about the bucket itself. Like, where do they keep the bucket? How big is the bucket? How many plays exactly, Josh, fit into that bucket? It's a good question, right, Trags? Because everything changes, especially with Julian Edelman out. But now you have Malcolm Mitchell, like you said, gone. Danny Amendola, who's injured. We don't know what his status is going to be for this week. But imagine if you're Josh McDaniels or if you're Tom Brady and you're working all spring and summer with these guys, and with both Mitchell and Amendola, those guys are going to be in and out maybe a little bit because you want to try to manage them. They've had significant injury histories. They're important to what you're going to try to do at the end of the year. So maybe they're not getting all the practice time, but you're still working very closely with those guys in meetings, behind the scenes, building that rapport that you do every year. And then all of a sudden the rug is sort of ripped out from underneath you to a certain extent where you lose Edelman. Malcolm Mitchell's put on IR the first day of the year, and Danny Amendola can't really last more than 3 quarters. It's almost like they rode him until the wheels fell off, using him as much as they did in that season opener. And so now what are you left with? And it's like, man, what did we do all spring and summer? Now, now we got to basically, this isn't how they think. They're not going to scrap their offense. It's still going to be the same offense. But in a lot of ways, in terms of the personnel, it's a completely different core. And so I think that makes life really difficult for both McDaniels and for Brady. And so I think this is going to be a story not only for this week in terms of, putting points on the board on the road in New Orleans, where you assume things like nonverbal communication are going to be really key. And, what is Tom Brady going to think when he looks out to his right and he sees Philip Dorsett, a guy who's been in practices with the Patriots for about 2 weeks, and, they're in the red zone and they can't hear themselves think. Is he going to have any idea what that guy is about to do? I don't know. So this is going to be something that I think we're going to have to continue to monitor for really, not even just the first month of the season, which is always kind of an extension of the preseason, but maybe even the first 6 or 7 weeks, because I think it could take that long before it really looks like this offense is humming the way they want it to.
My big concern, Phil, coming into the season, I talked with your colleague, Tommy Curran, about this. My big concern is when Julian Edelman went down, what is Tom going to do on 3rd and long, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. There was only really one big connection I saw Tom make when the game was still in doubt, and it was 3rd and 10, and I think he connected with Rob Gronkowski over the middle for, I don't know, 12, 13 yards, something like that. I'm like, that's what they really need more of, but it's going to be a lot harder when you have a lot of safeties. Eric Berry did a great job in the opener against Gronk. You're going to have Gronk with even more attention paid to him. It's going to be harder for Brady because he is going to have to depend on guys like Dorsett and Brandon Cooks to pick up the offense quickly. I guess question for you, Phil, how do they go about getting Brandon Cooks more involved?
You know what? I thought they did a decent job of it the other night, Trag. He was matched up with Terrence Mitchell, who was overmatched, really, throughout the course of the game. And there were a couple of plays there to be made that weren't made that could have made Cooks' night even bigger. He
overthrew
so
him
many
once.
defensive holds.
Yeah.
He did, yeah. So Brady missed him on a deep ball late in the game. Cooks dropped a pass. There was another pass over by the sidelines that's hard for me to call a drop late in the game. I think it was 3rd and 10, and he was about a yard short of the sticks, but had to go up and get it, come down, feet and bounds. There was a lot of contact on the play. That one ends up falling incomplete too. So I think his night could have looked even better on paper, but he did a really good job in terms of drawing penalties on that Kansas City defense, and that looked to me like part of the game plan that Kansas City came in with. They almost took a Seahawks type of approach to that game, saying to themselves, listen, we're going to beat them up all over the field. We don't care if we get called for a couple defensive holding penalties here or there, pass interference, that's fine. They're not going to call it every single snap. Remember Richard Sherman, I think it was, who said it a couple of years ago. You can't call pass interference every play. You can't call holding every play. So there are a lot of plays they got away with. I thought Chris Hogan got held a couple times. I thought Gronk got held a couple times. And so Cooks did a good job of sort of fighting through that contact and still picking up some of those flags. The speed is apparent, and that's going to be, it looks like, his role. Like what's too bad for the Patriots in some ways is that where they have this real need in the middle of the field for that Edelman/Amendola kind of role, it doesn't look like that's where he's going to be much, if at all, for the Patriots. He has to line up in the slot on occasion, but I think he's still going to be, kind of a field stretcher, even if he's in tight to the formation in that sense. So there's not many guys who can run with him, and if you're in single coverage with post safety, just a single high free safety in the middle of the field, Tom Brady's going to be looking to him really frequently, I think. And so, 3 catches, I believe it was, for 80-something yards in the opener. I would expect, as long as teams are playing him straight up and you're not getting all those holding penalties, you're going to see those numbers a lot of weeks be even more than that, because the speed is just too great, and he's a threat. Even if they are lacking some weapons in the middle of the field, what he does on the outside, works in a vacuum, really, in a lot of ways. And so I think he's going to continue to be kind of a go-to guy for Brady.
I'm going to read you some numbers here, Phil. 27 of 30.
I love numbers.
I know you do, and I know you also love film work, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. But I'm going to read you some numbers here. 27 of 32, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 143 quarterback rating. Do you know whose numbers those were?
It sounds like Alex Smith, the great Alex Smith, future Hall of Famer Alex Smith.
No, actually, they are not. They very well could have been, given how Alex Smith really chopped up the Patriots' defense. Those are the numbers.
To be honest with you, I stopped listening after you said 3 touchdowns or whatever it was.
So
that's on me.
So that's quite all right. A lot of people tune me out. You are not the first, and you are certainly not going to be the last. But
who was that, Trax? Who was that man?
Those would be the numbers of one Sam Bradford against the New Orleans Saints secondary, against the New Orleans Saints Dennis Allen defense on Monday Night Football. And I tweeted I tweeted it out last night. If Sam Bradford can do that, and granted it was the home opener for Minnesota, it was Randy Moss getting his number retired and all of that up in Minnesota, but if Sam Bradford can do that, I would think Tom Brady could easily reach 450 yards, and he had to be salivating watching the film of the Saints secondary, no?
That defense is a mess yet again. I mean, you're a broken record if you're ever commenting on what New Orleans has on that side of the ball, year after year, because it feels like they have been in an absolute rut for the last however many years, and they did nothing to fix that reputation on Monday night. If you just had broken coverages all over the field, Stephon Diggs, wide open touchdown. I mean, their number one receiver, really physically talented guy, somebody that really should not be creeping up on anyone. And when you have a safety and a corner or a linebacker in a corner just kind of looking at each other as he runs by you into the end zone, wide open, that's an issue. And so they've got a lot of new pieces on that defense. They have a lot of young players on that defense. We know they drafted the corner Marshawn Lattimore out of Ohio State early. Yep, last year. So, Alex Anzalone is a linebacker from Florida who's a really talented guy and somebody who I thought the Patriots might have been interested in because he gives them, some size and some speed at the linebacker level, but he's still a rookie. And so they have all these guys that are coming together and trying to figure out the communication. I mean, just going back to that Thursday night game, Trags, I mean, you saw it with the Patriots and how many guys, yes, do they have some new pieces? Of course. But Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, Devin McCourty, Alan Branch, these guys have played countless numbers of snaps with each other, and they were still having trouble with the communication in week one. Imagine what the thing looks like when you're running a bunch of new guys and rookies out there. They had a lot of issues, and I don't expect those issues to get fixed in a week. I don't know how they could. So you're right. This should be a big day for the Patriots offense. It should be a big day for Tom Brady. I think, Trags, they're going to be able to do kind of whatever they want. If they want to throw it, they should be able to throw it. If they want to run it, they want to use those backs. Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead, guys that Bill Belichick said recently, have explosive playmaking ability. They should be able to do it. The one real threat on that side of the ball for the Saints is Cam Jordan, their defensive end. But if you can sort of neutralize that by running away from him or making sure there's always help wherever he is in passing situations, you should be fine.
Jordan and Kenny Vaccaro, veteran strong safety, the only two recognizable names on that defense capable of making any noise. And I just expect Tom Brady would carve up this secondary. I'll tell you what, if he doesn't wind up with 3 to 4 touchdowns and the Patriots putting up, I'd say, north of 30 points, I'd say there's a problem. Fantasy football fans, football is back, which means FanDuel is back. FanDuel means fantasy football for everyday fans. New contests starting every week, no busted seasons, and something for everyone. Lots of contests to choose from, starting at just $1. Just pick a contest, choose your team, and watch your score real time. Over 2.5 million players have won a cash prize playing fantasy sports on FanDuel. Sign up today. Go to FanDuel.com, click the Join Now button, and use my code PATRIOTSBEAT. Try FanDuel for free with no deposit required. Visit FanDuel.com to claim your free contest and play for a share of $10,000. Just sign up using the promo code PATRIOTSBEAT. That's FanDuel.com, promo code PATRIOTSBEAT. Void where prohibited. We're talking with the one and only Phil A. Perry, as he is known on Twitter. His full name, Philaperry. If you're following him on Twitter, you should be. If you are not, where have you been? But anyway, Phil Perry does a masterful job, and I mean that, covering the Patriots, breaking down film for CSNE.com, and I'm so grateful you guys are moving towards NBC Sports Boston because it's going to be a lot easier to say. I don't know about you.
You and me both. You and me both, my friend. Yeah, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. CSNNE.
Yeah,
there's plenty of people that work in our building that still have trouble saying it, Treg.
Yeah, but I give Mike Giardi shit all the time, so he knows full well that if he's listening to this podcast, he knows what I'm talking about. I love busting his balls, so I digress a little bit, Phil, the senator.
That's okay.
We're allowed to do that on said podcast, the Patriots Beat podcast on CLNS Media. I want to talk about the defense, and we're talking before the break, and before we were talking before about how Tom Brady should really light up this really porous Saints defense. The flip side of that, of course, is the Saints are going to be playing at home, their home opener, and the Patriots have problems shutting down big plays on the opposing offense. And, in years past, the Patriots have done a masterful job of following the Bill Belichick credo, GTFB. And we know what that means.
Right.
In the preseason and in the opener, not so much. And Matt Patricia has been asked ad nauseum about what are you going to do to fix the big play problems on defense. So, Phil, I ask you, what can they do to make some adjustments to get these guys in better positions and cut down the big plays?
So I think there's a couple things you can do, and right off the bat, I would say is make sure that the communication is on point. There were too many instances watching that Thursday night game where you had players, heads turned around, defensive linemen looking at the linebackers looking at the safeties, defensive ends on one side of the line of scrimmage shouting over to his counterpart his end on the opposite end of the line. Way too much conversation right up until the moment the ball is snapped. That is far too late to be trying to figure out what you're doing in terms of how you're playing your front, what techniques you're in, what the coverage is going to be based on the look. Things need to be much, much crisper, much quicker. And so I think that's where you look first. You got to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Now, how do you do that? Well, they have a couple of options. If Dante Hightower is healthy, which we don't know if he's going to be even available for this game, I think he would be a candidate to move back to the middle of the defense because things just flow so much more smoothly through Hightower just because he's done it before.
And you know what, Phil?
To have that guy in the middle.
I'm going to interrupt you. I think that's a great point, and I think one of the domino effects of losing as much pass rush as the Patriots have had or have seen go out the door on the edge of their defense, one of the domino effects of that is they've had to compensate by moving Dante Hightower out to the edge where his natural position is in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, and you know what? We've been talking all summer about how Hightower would be a good candidate to help them on the edge when it looked like they were really in desperate need of numbers, and it still looks that way, and it definitely looks that way when he went down the other night. But what he does in the middle is so important that if you don't have that shored up, then everything around it can fall apart. And it's not to put it entirely on Kyle Van Noy because he's still relatively new to the defense. He's relatively new to that off-the-ball linebacker position. It's a guy who spent most of his college career getting up the field, getting after quarterbacks, and is still trying to figure things out. He still leans heavily on Hightower. He did when he got to the team last year, and he does to this day in terms of any time he has a question, that's the guy he's going to. And I think that was happening on the field, Treg. You would see Hightower communicating with Van Noy, and then Van Noy having to be sort of the telephone tower in the middle trying to relay the message to everybody else, and it was just taking really long. And it did get better over the course of the game, and I thought in some respects, and then, of course, they give up two huge, a bunch of big plays in the fourth quarter that really kind of thumped them. And so, how good really did it get? But especially early in that game the other night against the Chiefs, communication was tough. So if you can move Hightower back to the middle, that may solve some problems. Maybe you can get David Harris back there in the middle, and maybe he takes on some of those responsibilities because that's something that he's much more comfortable with.
Why didn't he play that much? Why didn't he play that much? First of all, were you shocked? I know I was when you saw Jordan Richards starting the game. He forced the fumble, obviously.
Period, yeah.
Kareem Hunt's first career carry, he forced a fumble. Devin McCourty recovers. But it was remarkable to me how much Jordan Richards played, and David Harris really didn't. No?
Yeah, I was very surprised because I thought Harris was going to see a lot of time in the middle of the field. I think what it told us was just how little they trust Harris in terms of coverage and how much they thought of the speed on the opposite side of the ball in Kansas City's offensive personnel. that was not a good game for David Harris to be out there for. It was not a good game for Landon Roberts to be out there for. Those guys are not coverage players. Roberts is a pretty good athlete, though he's a smaller player. But even he was not somebody they wanted out there. They were using safeties as linebackers, and it's something they've done for a long time with Patrick Chung, we all know. But you saw Devin McCourty dropping into the box quite a bit. Deron Harmon played just about the whole game as their deep safety in the middle of the field. You saw Jordan Richards, again, they're both as an off-the-ball linebacker and playing on the edge. And so when Kansas City runs this personnel out there where they'll have, 3 receivers, a tight end, and a back, but the tight end is Travis Kelce, who's really a big receiver, and the back is Kareem Hunt, who, coming out of the draft, out of Toledo, was somebody that you knew was going to be able to catch the football and who showed it pretty early in that game the other night. You have 5 wide receivers essentially on the field. And so that's not a situation that they want David Harris to be in. Now, I think it'll be different this week against the Saints. The Saints have 3 backs that they'll rotate in and out of there. And Alvin Kamara is another one of these guys like Kareem Hunt, who can catch the football and catch it really well. Mark Ingram will even give you some of that, but I think you'll see more of Harris. I think Harris could be almost a shadow player for Adrian Peterson. Like when Adrian Peterson comes in the game and the defense is given the opportunity to substitute, I think that's when the Patriots would bring in Harris, and he'll be that that guy to go against their big back. But even in fact, just having him in the middle of the defense, having somebody with some experience, having somebody with the clout that David Harris has, clout that Kyle Van Noy really doesn't have. Clout that Jordan Richards certainly doesn't have. To have that guy, whether Hightower or Harris, in the middle of the field barking out orders to these players that are in front of him and behind him means a lot because there's no conversation. Sometimes Gerard Mayo has talked to us about this on QuickSight. Sometimes you just need somebody to put his foot down and say, listen, this is what we're doing. I'll take the heat. If the call is wrong, I'll take the heat. It's okay. But we all have to be, even if it's the wrong call, we all have to be on the same page. It's something Bill Belichick has said many times. You can all be doing the wrong thing as long as you're doing the wrong thing together. That's better than having 2 guys doing the right thing and 3 guys doing the wrong thing, because then you're all out of sorts and you don't have certain areas of the field covered, and that's when you get gashed for big plays. I think Harris is the kind of voice who, if in the middle of the field, would carry that weight. And he could really be that decision maker when it gets to, quote unquote, nut cutting time. And you have to say, listen, guys, this is what we're doing. So I think we'll see more of him this weekend.
Anytime I hear a player, Phil, say, I'm going to take charge, if the play call is wrong, blame it on me, I think of only one instance, and I cringe. And you know which instance this is, and he's talked about
Patrick Chung.
No, I'm going to go even further back. A Football Life. Remember Rodney Harrison?
Yeah.
Remember when he said that if he had one decision to make over again at the end of Super Bowl 42, he would have not called cover 0. He would have gotten back. He would have gone against what was being called on the field. And, I think if that were the case, I think they would have had better coverage. I think they win the Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. I want to get on. I
thought you were going, just to interrupt you real quick, Drake. Yep. I thought you were going with the famous, the infamous Patrick Chung fake punt run when he was the punt protector, and yes. I believe there was a certain look, and he has the ability to make that call. He's not. That's not his job anymore. That's Nate Ebner when Nate Ebner's healthy. But when Patrick Chung was running that position, he had the ability to call for the snap and to run it up there, and it didn't go so well for him one time.
What game was that? What year?
I want to say it was Jets. This was back during Chung's first tenure with the team, so it was pretty early on. I want to say it was
wasn't the playoff game, was it?
See, this is the kind of thing that would be good research for me to do before the podcast.
Yeah, it sure would, wouldn't it?
There's so much, so much useless football knowledge up there right now.
Going
hard for me to pull.
Light us up on Twitter, right or wrong.
Please do. By the way.
Means you're listening.
So we need that.
Okay, I want to get on to Adrian Peterson. Obviously, Bill Belichick on Tuesday acknowledged the fact that, yes, we had Adrian Peterson in, respected him a lot, obviously respects a great deal about what he has been able to accomplish in what I think is going to be a Hall of Fame career. That is up for debate at some other time. But really, Adrian Peterson came to Foxborough, wound up, Patriots did not sign him. But what were your takeaways? And I want to get your thoughts on that death stare that AP gave Sean Payton Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine?
Yes,
how that would go over?
That's exactly why I asked the question.
If that were ever to happen.
Yeah.
Listen, I think there's something to the way the Patriots have built this team, and I hesitate to say they're gonna stay away from big names, because obviously it's not the case. They bring in guys like Corey Dillon, Randy Moss, guys that have had a lot of success in this league at other places, and then come here. But I think the culture that you're used to, the way you're used to doing things, matters. And I think it's something that the Patriots look into and they really try to get a feel for when they do, whether it's work a guy out or they have they have him come in to meet with him during the free agency period, even during the draft. There's a lot that goes into how a player is going to fit with the team, and it's not just what's his physical skill set, what role is he going to play. And so, I wonder if they had any inklings of, what kind of teammate, what kind of coachable player Peterson would be when they did meet with him, because clearly the guy's a star and he's been treated a certain way his entire career, and really up until the last calendar year or so. And he's not brought back by the Vikings. The Saints bring him in clearly to be part of a committee, and it takes less than a full week into the season, and he's already, it seems like, rebelling against it. And I know what he said on Twitter, and hey, I was just telling Coach we needed to run it up the gut. Well, whose call is that? That is not, right. Since when do you call the plays? Maybe that's how it worked in Minnesota. I don't know. But Sean Payton's been around quite a bit. Sean Payton's won the Super Bowl. Sean Payton is widely renowned as one of the best offensive minds in the game. And he's going to deal with you barking at him on the sidelines, that you need to run it up the middle because, oh, by the way, that's my role on this team, Coach. So, basically put me in there. Give me the damn ball. Steal a line from Keyshawn Johnson. But I don't know how this is going to end, because I think Peterson's already unhappy with the workload he's gotten. I don't think it's going to get any better for him. I think Kamara played the most snaps of all three of their running backs the other night. And the way the league is going, quote-unquote big backs, the LeGarrette Blunts of the world, the Adrian Petersons of the world. Peterson was obviously an incredibly talented guy in his prime, but he's not that guy anymore. And those kinds of backs are becoming less and less around the league. It's like the linebacker position on the other side. I mean, Kyle Van Noy, the one true linebacker for the Patriots for much of that game Thursday night, the Brandon Spikes role is gone. David Harris played 2 snaps. Those guys are getting less and less run, and it seems like Adrian Peterson doesn't really understand that. And I'm not sure if he continues to get healthy in New Orleans, how long that relationship is going to last.
Well, I think the Patriots and Belichick knew full well, forget the attitude. I think the need for AP to get the ball 25, 26, 27 times a game is counterintuitive to the way the Patriots run their offense. And,
exactly.
And I think that is probably the fundamental issue Belichick wanted to avoid. And
listen, they'll still have games, Trags, right, where Mike Gillislee, who is basically the big back now in New England, I'm sure they'll have games like LeGarrette Blount did, where
right.
He'll get 20 touches, but it's not going to be every week. And if you're going to deal with a guy bitching and moaning every week because he's not getting 20 touches, I don't know, how much value there is in that player.
Okay, I want to finish up with a couple of fun questions for you, Phil. And I think
These have all been fun questions, Trags. They've all been fun. I'm having a blast. You don't have to, don't prop up.
I don't have to qualify
by putting down the other ones.
I won't qualify my questions any further. I am going to ask you straight up, what makes a good question to ask Bill Belichick?
Oh boy! I mean, your guess is as good as mine, man. We're both on there on every conference call. I mean, we've been in countless press conferences together. I think some of the qualities of what Bill Belichick thinks is a good question are pretty obvious. Anytime you can bring up the Giants of the late '80s, mid to late '80s,
right,
and early '90s, I think that'll get a good answer. Really any kind of coaching point question where you're not putting a player on the spot. You may not even mention a team or a specific coach or a scheme, but I always think the how does this work kind of questions go over well with him, because at his core he's a teacher. Both his parents are teachers. For him, coaching is teaching, and so I think he does. As much as he kills us from time to time, and he's killed both of us.
Yep.
For questions we've asked, but I think he does get a kick out of explaining things to us, and especially on topics that maybe don't get touched on all that often. So, I think I asked him one recently that resulted in a really long answer.
Yes, well, I was going to bring that up, Phil.
Quarterback mechanics, I think, was one. It's really kind of random which ones he decides to dig his teeth into. Anytime he can avoid specific mentions of a player or specific what are you going to do this week, usually those go over better than not.
So Everson Walls, that was the question you asked
right.
at I think it was the first or second week of preseason. And your question, I'm going to obviously paraphrase here, was, do you have to balance coaching technique versus coaching a player within that particular player's comfort zone and how they play? His answer to your question was 7.5 minutes long, and it was 948 words, something like that. It was brilliant, Bill Belichick, and I think, and I got so much response on Twitter, and I'm sure obviously you did too, about that's the beauty of Belichick, because he brings you inside the way he coaches.
Right, and yeah, you're right. So that's a great example of the way his brain works too, because it's not okay, here's a box with all my quarterback thoughts over here, and here's a box with all my my defensive thoughts, my defensive game plans over here. You ask him about it's really a general coaching question. It's like how much do you allow players to kind of have their own style when you want them to do things a certain way at the same time. It's sort of a philosophical question. And so I asked him about quarterback specifically because at the time I was trying to get some insight on how the team felt about Jacoby Brissett, whose accuracy was all over the place at the time. Wanted to know if, I wanted to follow up on that question, Trags. It was, I think, Stacey James, the PR czar for the Patriots, said last question. I was hoping that it would be a quick answer and I could follow up on Brissett specifically, but the answer went so long, the call was over. I couldn't follow up, and he's talking about cornerbacks by the end of the thing, and Everson Walls and the Giants, and Walls did it his own way. We taught it a certain way, techniques a certain way. He really did things one way, and it was his way. And I told him, as long as it works, hey, that's fine by me. And it is interesting. So it is interesting to hear how he approaches certain things, and it's rubbed off on some of the people who have come through his system. I remember talking to Wes Welker before the season for an event here in Boston, and he's a very low-level coach for the Houston Texans right now, but he's working with the receivers, and he's working with the punt returners. And his approach with the punt returners is, okay, let's talk about, what you saw in this return, and, a player may come back to him and say, well, you know what, Wes, I feel more comfortable doing it this way, and I like, setting up my return like this. And Welker's answer was great, and not at all indicative of like a hardened, old school kind of football coach, which he's not. And he said, okay, well, player X, is that going to result in a big play for us? And the player said, I think so. I hope so. He says, okay, then do that. Like, it's not that hard. We want guys to be comfortable and to make plays. And so there is room, no matter how stuffy you may seem as a coach, there is room to allow those guys to do that. Like I said, as long as it works. If it's not working, then you're going to see some changes.
So my rule of thumb, and we'll wrap it up, Phil. Phil Perry of CSNE, CSNNE.com, soon to be NBC Sports Boston. Here is what Bill Belichick once told a reporter, and not me, believe it or not, I covered Bill Belichick way back in the Cleveland Browns days when I was there in Canton, Ohio in 92 and 93. And he once told a reporter, did you watch the game? After a post-game press conference. For whatever reason, Phil, those words have always stuck with me with regard to asking Bill Belichick any question. And comes down to a simple point of fact. Did you watch the game? And if you show Bill that you watch the game, and you hear this all the time, Phil, when you hear him, or when he hears you ask a question that shows that you watched a particular detail of the game, his face will light up, and he will almost certainly always give you some type of coherent, intelligent, insightful remark. Now, granted, immediately after a game, it won't be in depth, but the day after, he gives you the best answers with regard to that. And to me, that's the key to Bill Belichick.
Yep, I'm with you. He appreciates the attention to detail. He also, I think, just appreciates the effort and consistency. Like, you're there, so often. I'm there often. There's a core group of people, and he's referred to us by different nicknames over the years. But I think he is much more likely to answer even a bad question from that group than maybe a good and a pointed question from a new reporter, just because he is more comfortable when he sees you there every day. And I think he respects the fact, for the people that are there every day or on every conference call, he respects the fact that you continue to show up and that you continue to participate. You can't just be sitting there either. If you're asking questions day after day, and it shows that you're trying, and it shows that you are doing the work before you come in, I think he respects that too. And I know I've had a lot of bad questions. I've had a lot of bad questions shot down, but I've had a lot of bad questions that have actually gotten pretty good answers, because I think he kind of knows what I'm getting at, and he tries to help you out in a certain way.
Well, and that's what I have always told people about this and covering this team. It's not always about the question you ask; it's the answer you get. And the question could be terrible; it could be, not the greatest wording, and God knows I ramble on and on and on sometimes, but it's the answer that he will give you, or anybody for that matter in any sport, that they give you that really matters. Phil, how can people follow you? I want you to include not only Twitter, but your CSN shows, your podcasts, everything you do for CSN. What are the best ways for people to follow you?
Yeah, Track. So, Twitter at Phil A. Perry, Instagram, same deal, trying to keep the Instagram stories updated with stuff from down at Gillette, so you can follow me there. We are on every single night during the football season at 6 o'clock. We have football-specific shows starting at 6, Monday through Sunday, basically. Essentially, we've got you covered 7 days of the week. Football Fix is a show that I will be on every single Friday night with Casey Smith, who co-hosts Boston Sports Tonight, and Mark DeButo Bertrand from 98.5 The Sports Hub. That show just started last week. We're talking fantasy. We talk gambling. We talk social media stuff. It's a very fun, we try to make it funny show that we're really having a lot of fun working on already this year. That's only going to get better. We also have Quick Slants, which is every Tuesday. I'm on that with Tom Curran and Gerard Mayo and Devin McCourty, who will be there all season long. And then, of course, every night we have Boston Sports Tonight, which is 9 to midnight. With more Tom Curran, where I get to continue to interact with my buddy, our Patriots insider, and we fight and we laugh and we have a great time there. And early edition as well with Felger and Trenny and Gary Tangley. And so, listen, we've got just football on top of football on top of football here at Comcast all the way through the season. So for all of your football needs and wants, you come to Comcast and we've got you.
And nobody covers it better than Phil Perry. Stay with CLNS all day, and I mean that, by the way. Stay with CLNS all day on game day, starting with the CLNS Media New England Patriots pregame show with Alex Barth a half hour before every game. Then you can catch the postgame show with Marvin Ezon and Mike Molyneux live after every single game on clnsmedia.com. That is when you're not paying attention to Phil Perry postgame. Subscribe to both on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube now. Also, get daily team updates on the Patriots Newsfeed podcast with Tyler Trudeau, which is also available on the CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show feed, available once again on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and the CLNS Media mobile app. Thanks again for downloading today's Patriots Beat. I want to once again thank our guest, Phil Perry from CSNNE.com, soon to be NBC Sports Boston. You can follow him on Twitter at Phil A. Perry. You can also give us a follow at Patriots_beat and at CLNS Media. You can give my own personal account a follow, of course, at TRAGS, TRAGS. Today's sponsor was FanDuel. For Patriots content manager Mike Alongi, CLNS media executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of the network Nick Gelso. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. This is Mike Petraglia, and this is the Patriots Beat podcast, powered by CLNS Media.
What's going on, Pats Nation? This is Marvin Zahn of the CLNS Media Network, and I'm here to tell you right now to check out the CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show hosted by myself and my co-host, Mr. Mike Nice. And live on CLNS Radio immediately after every single Pats game. Call in at 929-477-2386 toll-free to get your voice heard and contribute to the host breakdown and analysis of the latest Patriots contest. We also got the stars and sorries of the day, Twitter posts for the plays of the game, and everything else that is going on with the 5-time Super Bowl champion. Subscribe to CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show on iTunes and Stitcher, and the best way, download the free CLNS Media Network mobile app for on-demand listening anytime, any place, anywhere.